What up? Welcome everybody to Late Night Live number 120. 120. I know I say it every single week, but I can't believe we've been going for this long. It's kind of crazy. I hope everybody's having a wonderful evening. Today, we are playing... What up, Cheryl? We are gonna tackle this bad boy. R.J. Quillman by C.C. Kanan. I think could be eating my own words in a little bit here, but I feel like this is going to be slightly easier than the previous ones in this series, primarily because there's not a lot of super circular forms. The only real circle we see is this here at the end of the R. What up, Skeet? Nice to see you. But what will make this one, I guess, the challenging bit, we do have the asymmetrical shades like we had last week. Was that last week? Yeah. We have the asymmetrical shades, and then obviously Kanan really quick shades like that little shade on the R. Super quick, super tricky. Also a variation of the R that I'm just not super comfortable with. I've used it, but not a ton. Yeah, I feel like it should just be a fun one. What up, Marilyn? How you doing? So let's dive into it. I need to warm up. It's been a busy day today, so I didn't get to do a warm-up before the stream. Now I'm experimenting with something here today. As you guys know, I always use one of these just a little glide sheet, just a piece of paper that has been cut in half lengthwise. For my hand to glide on underneath my work. It serves sort of a dual purpose. Number one, and the most important reason we use it, it allows your fingers to glide nice and smooth, and you're not getting like hand oils and all that kind of stuff on the writing paper underneath. But then sort of another benefit to it, let's say for example, I can hardly see it because it's underneath, but on my guide sheet, if I was writing on this line, let's say I didn't have a guide sheet, underneath I was writing on a piece of black paper or a piece of opaque paper, or I just didn't have a guide sheet underneath and I wanted to write. If I were to align it so I have my glide sheet here, this line right here serves as my sort of guide for my straight line, so I could go across here without this line on. I know it's there now, but this is sort of one of the things that helps when I use white ink on black paper. Going across, just kind of following this line, because it gives you a line, and then you just hover an equidistant above it all the way across. Well, I mean, I guess that's good then, Marilyn. I know there are people like Fozzy's not here today yet, but I know people who live in very also tropical or humid climates have issues with the arm sticking to the page and things like that. I don't always write with the glide sheet, or I never used to, and then I just got in the habit of it, and now I really, really like it. I've just gotten used to it. It keeps things nice and flowy and smooth. Is it necessary? Not 100%, but it's nice. It's a good habit to get into, I think. Alright, so let's warm up here. Oh yeah, I was saying, what I'm experimenting with, I never got to the actual point of why I went down that little rabbit hole. So I have my glide sheet. I have taped, I might not like this, and I might end up untaping it in a few minutes here, but I've taped my glide sheet for tonight to my desk. So, usually in the previous streams and whatnot, you can always see me looking up at my screen to make sure that my paper is flat all the time, or is always, nice and straight with the screen, with the camera. Whereas today, with this here, I'll always, in theory, be at this same angle, because my glide sheet won't move the whole day regardless of where my piece of paper goes. I was doing this the other day when I was recording some writing, because if you're not recording in like 4K, for example, 4K you can always just kind of shoot it and zoom in, you can crop into your writing. But when I'm doing ornamental penmanship, it can be challenging, I guess, to write in the exact same spot at the exact same size every time. So I kind of use this as a I was experimenting with it to see if I had this, then I always am lining up to this glide sheet that never moves. So in theory, my writing should be closer to the same thing. What up, Oja Swaney? Welcome, welcome. Alright, let's get some warm-up going on here. Busy day today. Ovals. Whoa, hello, Jeff. First time live visitor. That's pretty darn exciting. Well, it's very nice to have you, Jeff, and congratulations on coming out of the lurk zone. I mean, everybody knows we love our lurkers here at Late Night Live, but it's great to have you here. Jeff, where are you from? Out of curiosity. Oh, this song has very quiet words, vocals. That threw me for a loop for a sec. I didn't know if that was happening, if I was hearing my own feedback or something from the microphone. Okay, Washington, D.C. Nice, nice. Right on. Well, welcome to the live. I don't know if it's rapping. I think it sounded like a news broadcast in the background. Didn't sound like rapping to me. Sounded like a snippet from like a radio show or something. I don't know if it was English. I wasn't paying that close to attention. And my music is pretty quiet in my headphones. Alright, I'm hoping I can execute this week's signature somewhat small. Like I did last week's, I was pretty happy with last week's signature. I was able to execute relatively small, nice and controlled. I'm hoping we can do that same thing with, well, this one and all signatures, because that's always nice. I think the music is set pretty low for you guys as well. As always, if you ever want me to bump up the music a little bit or turn it down, you let me know. There is music playing if you can't hear it. Hello, Abjeet. Welcome, welcome. Alright, what kind of strokes do we have to practice today? Alright, well, last week we had a lot of work going into that V shade. Or it was the U shade and the V shade in last week's. Keeping that short. Like this is, I would consider this short, but it's still not nearly as short as Kanan would have done it. That's short, but not very wide. Yeah, like that's some Kanan-esque. I'm gonna zoom you guys in a little bit. I feel like you're quite far away. Maybe that's better. For now, anyways. Yeah, getting that shade fat and short, huge challenge for me, and I would imagine most people. The R in today's signature has two super short shades. So last week's practice will ideally help this week, I think. The main difference, our first R downstroke, I don't want to touch the wet ink, but the first R here, if you notice we have almost a straight line on the right tine and the left tine is bubbling out. So we got to get that shape I know when I do a stem stroke, that style of stem stroke, I do my shades much longer than Kanan does. So I gotta be wary of that and just practice that stroke a little bit. Right on the bottom. Like so is how we'll practice that, I think. And that's sitting, yeah, on the baseline. Sometimes you can bring that one down below the baseline. I know Michael Saul does that with his capital B, and I really like that variation of the capital B. But we will keep this R on the baseline. I'm getting some wonky stuff on the way up. Ooh, that was a good shade. I got some snappage on the way up. Yes, once those shades are added, Marilyn, it is quite wiggly. Oh, getting that right time to push out is a fun challenge. This is it's a good practice one. Oh, there's something floating in my ink. I'll deal with that later, I guess. What is that? It's like a little piece of dust or something. Not a bug, luckily. That also does happen. Alright, let's start adding the horizontal oval to start it off with. Like so. That horizontal oval was really low, actually. Yeah, it comes up really steep like that. Get something like that. That may be, in fact, exactly what he did. That quick turn at the bottom can be tough to get smooth. That one came out really nice and smooth. I often get little wavy bits at the bottom there. Now, I'm in the habit of creating this bit of space right in there, which is totally normal for me and what I have always strived for, so there's not a lot of retrace. But in Kanan's example, if you look here, it's gonna be weird for me, but in Kanan's example, there is this horizontal oval comes up and it stays curved, and then it's almost like he either retraced this way or he probably lifted and dropped his pen right there. So he's not actually retracing that curve on the top half. Potentially. But yeah, there's not a lot of space in there, which, if I'm gonna do it like him, I gotta get that under control a little bit. If I can. I like the little loop on the top of the art. I use those quite often. Alright, so we gotta drop that horizontal oval. Like that, and then we lift and come here. Sort of like that. I think that's similar. I'm much more angled than I should be at the moment. Gotta come back to a 52. think it's with... Here I'm good, here I'm good. I gotta come up even more drastically after that horizontal entry. Oh, that was maybe too drastic. But it illustrates how I can get that shape though. So that's what I gotta do. A little more like that. No problem. Pulling fibers there. I should come down a line, I guess. That's the idea. Alright, moving on from there, I gotta make sure I keep these lines super close together so that I can thread both of them with that little loop on the R, which will be a wee bit of a challenge. Fiber on my nip. Fiber, good for your diet, not for your nip. Okay, so we gotta make sure I'm in the habit of making this too short. I gotta bring that a little bit higher so that I have space to get that shade in there. Today I'm using a Leonard Principle. The same Leonard Principle that I've been using for the past number of weeks. It's been quite a few weeks that I've been using this one. It was when I did the, was it four lives ago? When I did black on white. Or sorry, white on black paper, and it was a fresh, brand new Leonard Principle nib. This is that same one. It has been, I won't say sharpened, because I've never actually sharpened it. I have burnished it or tuned it a couple of times, just really quickly, if ever I get a nib snap or something, just take some of the aggression out of it. But it's still relatively fresh feeling. It does have a slightly crooked nib slit, which I think is what caused those snaps most of the time. Jeez, he just has to keep going. So my inclination would always be to I like to end my R right there, and then I come back in here, and then I would add, because there are samples of Kanon's work that this shade is not connected to anything, they would lift there. But in this example, keeping in mind that this example might have been, pieces of it might have been drawn and touched up and whatnot, but the little loop is unbroken. So today, or for this specific signature, I'm going to try to keep going, which makes making this shade super short a challenge, but we're gonna try to keep going. And then I'm gonna have to break my own habit of doing this horizontal exit oval and try to get in the habit of making that more round, large loop there, because that goes into the J. But we'll get there. We're not there yet. Oh, slight snag I'm realizing with where I have my glide sheet taped to my desk is a little too far to the right. So I can't move my paper underneath. That's as far as I can go. So I don't off screen there, so I might have to tweak that in a moment. Just to give myself a little bit more real estate to work with. Okay, we gotta make this R taller. That's the idea. What up, Shaq? Good evening, good evening. How you doing tonight? Or this evening? I can't remember what time it is for you. Alright, I'm gonna retape my sheet here. Peel up my masking tape. It's just painter's tape, so it doesn't ruin my desk. And it's not permanent, obviously. And then I'm going to slide this over. We don't need a lot more room that way, just a little bit. Cut a new piece of paper. Take the tack off of it just once on my leg, so it's not fresh. Make sure it's flat with the camera. It is. Tape that down. There we go. That problem should be solved. Yeah, Kanan was good at those circular exits. Interestingly though, I know we all, exit ovals are horizontal ovals 99.9% of the time. Kanan is the exception, but also something that's interesting to note. Well, can I reach it without taking my headphones off? Will they let me? I'll reach this on my bookshelf. I'll be right back. Oh, come on. I want to find it here, because I remember being surprised when I found this. And I haven't seen or heard a lot of people talking about it. But if we visit Mr. F.W. Tamblin's book, great book, by the way, I highly recommend it to anybody. It is not expensive. It is still printed. It is a great book. And I have, this is not the original. I have a copy of the original, and this one looks very, very similar. So it's not like it lost a lot of quality in the reprint or anything. It's a good print of the book. So, highly recommend it. But if I can find what I'm looking for here, I wish I could remember what page it was on. Kanan actually talks about the exit oval, and he mentions visualizing like a penny, a round penny. Kanan or Tamblin did round exit ovals sometimes. I need to find it here so I'm not making things up. I didn't make this up though. It does say keep letter narrow, turn at top oval and slanting downward with circular finish like N. Circular finish. But I want to find, where does he talk about penny? Ooh, it doesn't say penny, sorry, he says dime. Right here. Oh, I lost it. There we go. Note on the last part of the top of the N is lower than the first, that the turn at the top is oval, and that the finish is a circle. Lay down a dime, draw around it, and you'll have the idea. What? I remember reading this like right when I first got into ornamental penmanship in Spencerian, and I was so confused because that went against sort of everything that I'd always done in ornamental penmanship or in exit ovals. But yeah, Tamblin straight up taught you to trace a dime. So if we were doing our R there, I mean, this is quite big for how the size of writing I'm doing, but yeah, he would full on, I guess maybe not too big actually. If we look at that last R and J. If I had that exit oval, I'd want that to be a dime to go around there rather than the oval that it is there. Yes, this is Tamblin's. It's F.W. Tamblin's Home Instructor in Penmanship. This is an older copy of the reprint. It has this paper cover on it. The newer, the better one is the navy blue cover with, I believe, gold writing on the top. Again, highly recommend it. It's not an expensive book. Do not, I repeat, do not purchase it on eBay from, there's a couple sellers who keep posting it on eBay for like really expensive. Don't do that. It's a currently produced book. I believe John Neal or Paper Ink should sell it. They should have it in their store. Not expensive. It's not a vintage book that's worth a ton of money. So don't pay the vintage ton of money prices. It's kind of similar to the E.J. O'Sullivan, Marilyn. You're not crazy off there. That's probably one of my favorite signatures of any of the Sig Sling and Sunday challenges we've done. Oh, it wasn't even... I think an eraser fiber was in my ink. I was erasing stuff earlier, and I guess I must have blew some in there. It's a fun one. Okay. Dive back into this here. Okay, now we have to figure out... R feeling kind of decent. It's okay. We gotta... This oval needs to be a little more angled that way. That's fixable. We got this shade. I'm a little more used to making the shade on the R short. Granted, I don't usually continue all the way through from those ovals, but that's okay. Keeping the short R or the short shade on that little bit is fine. My angle's a little too abrupt there. But now with my connections here, come around there, we're all good. Horizontal oval there. Now when I come around here, this is where there's my target. So I'm going through the top of the R. It's important to remember. And then I have to go down on the right hand side of that little cross in there, which is important. And then we cross down here. Cool, and then we're good. So it's getting that cross. That's our main focus there. Important to know where our target is until the muscles start getting used to the movement. Okay. So one thing I note, I have to bring this little oval farther over. This is not round, obviously, because I wasn't thinking about that at all in that moment, which is no good. This has to come up. This doesn't have to be quite so long. So then this can travel a little more to the right. Other than that, not bad, not bad. Shade's ugly, but where it is, in relation to the rest of the design, not too bad. This cross is on the right, it's the left side, so we're good there. Oh, and he just ends that there. All right. Sweet, that's the idea. Now we just got to get it on our bones. Or muscles, rather. We're gonna take out the shades real quick and just get that shape. Just like that. Oh, that's wobbly though. Too much thinking. Will make it be wobbly. A little too far away. I moved that tape, but it doesn't feel like I really changed anything. Okay, that's our idea. We didn't come to the right or to the left enough to get that little space in there, but that's all right. Just step in the right direction. Now we're gonna add the focus of the circular exit oval to the R. Let's see if we can get that going there. How does he get his J so... His J and his R are much closer together than mine. Well, not much, but they are a little bit closer together. But I'm not mad at that. It's not too shabby. Oh, a little fly has come into my apartment and is sitting on my ink jar. You're not gonna be happy if you go in there. That is not water, little fly. What's the idea? Getting a couple of nib snaps in there, but nothing too horrible. Trying to go smaller. That was the idea, though. Push that compound curve a little bit farther to the right. This shade needs to stay on our slant line. That's tough. but it's coming along. I go a little bit. This curve is too drastic on the bottom. This one is better. Nice slope down into it. I need to make that natural for all of them. Not like that. My nib. Not very smooth feeling. I might start a new one if this one doesn't feel good. Hello, Rose. Long time no see. Are you working on your engrosser script this evening again? This nib is stressing me out a little bit. It is a bit of a challenge, but it's a fun challenge. Well, yeah, we've missed you. It's nice to have you back. Getting the square bottoms and whatnot can be highly dependent on your paper and ink combo as well. Some papers just don't like you to pull that stroke and finish it across to the right, or to the left, sorry. Let's smooth this out a little bit. Just having issues going full speed because I'm getting snaps or snags into the paper, which is not helpful. We need freedom. Nope. Feels like I can't see it, but it feels annoying is what it feels. Both tines are flat though. It feels like... Well, hello, Peter. Welcome. Who breaks all the rules? Some rules are meant to be broken. This nib hasn't even been sharpened. It doesn't make sense that it should be... It should be nice and smooth. Oh, Kanan. Yep. He's got the market cornered when it comes to circular flourishes. I agree, Shaq. Some rules. Well, all rules. You can push them. Once you know how. Get a little more free. Light bit. Still get cut off there a little bit, I guess. I did not move my tape over quite enough. I thought I moved it over plenty, but I guess not. He doesn't do his... I habitually make my J relatively sharp up there. I gotta break that habit to get it looking a little more like Kanan's. Sounds good, Rose. I'll book a flight. I would love to come. It's been... When was I there last? 2016? No, 18? 18? I think 18. 19? I can't remember. Ugh. There. That's the best J we've done so far. This nib still feel like it wants to snap. But we'll try to tame it. I'm on Rhodia, so it has no reason to snap. I agree, Rose. That was too long ago. Well, talk to Fozzie, make it happen. Okay, now we gotta get that J shade looking like it needs to. With all the weight on the right hand side. So you'll notice something. Interesting little just thing to note. If you look at these slant angles, you get a ruler. If you look at this slant, like obviously they don't use slant lines, but if we look at the approximate angle of the writing, like there we have our ascenders, the downstroke of this Q. Same with our R is a little more vertical than that. But if you notice the J, at the bottom of the J is sort of the important part I'm trying to highlight here. How much it curves off to the left when it finishes. I wouldn't necessarily say all over the place. They're not exactly precise, no. But it's hard to be precise with this type of work. But the big thing that I want to note is, or that I want to show, when we do descenders most of the time. We want that oval to be bisected on the slant line. Go under I forgot, I don't have to look at the screen. I can just look at my guide sheet. They are slightly different. Yes, Marilyn, I wouldn't say all over the place. But they are slightly different, yes. Yeah, so a lot of times, like on a descender stroke, when we're coming down here, we want to keep that oval going on our slant line. Whereas what Kanan seems to have done, as he's coming here, he's on the slant line, and then when he hits the shade starts his movement to the right, so the loop of his descender is more angled than his slant line. Now, I don't know that that's necessarily a super intentional thing to do. I feel like that just kind of naturally happens when you do that shade, or when you do that shape, or when you try to get to the shade somewhat asymmetrical, where it's flat on the inside and has that more bubbly on the outside. It naturally kind of gets that curve down to the left. So I'm assuming that's where that comes from. He most certainly was, Marilyn. I agree completely. J's here, try to get that shade a little more asymmetrical. That's what we're wanting. Nice and straight on the inside, curvy on the outside. Is the goal. See, I naturally try to keep mine straight, so I have to break that habit. Just a little bit though, too much and it gets way too extreme of a hook on the end, or on the bottom. Yeah, that's valid. Thank you very much for hanging out with us. I apologize to all of the East Coast folk that these are so late. We will see you next time for sure. Thanks very much for hanging out, man. Have a wonderful evening. Sleep well. Something like that is what we're looking for, I would say. A little big, we gotta shrink it a little bit. The shades are very long and thin. My J strokes. J stroke. Strokes of the J, not to be confused with the technique used while paddling a canoe. Which is also called a J stroke. If you're ever in a canoe and you want to paddle straight, you use what's called a J-stroke. Canoeing is one of my favorite things. I don't own a canoe, nor do I canoe very often, but I love canoe. Fun fact you may not have known. That will be on the quiz. Whole thing happens in one, well, I guess 2 strokes. I wish I could start the J with the downstroke of the R would make me happy, but no worries, Peter. Always appreciate you stopping by and saying hi. Best wishes to you as well. Have a good evening, man. Whoops. Not too bad. I would love to smooth that out a little bit. Okay. That's one thing I have to keep in mind. The R, like so, this is not the smoothest, but it goes nice and low below the bass line. Just like Kanan's does. I just have to remember when I do that, I have to come up quite a bit higher. Yeah, that's the idea. That's what we want. Making breakthrough. Speed after the R shade. We gotta pick it up to smooth it out a little bit. Nope. Is not enjoying going into that J. Something I'm doing with my hand, maybe? Changing the angle unintentionally. Let me try one with whole arm real quick. I feel like that J is just Coming from the R, I don't know. I feel restriction. Let's try a whole arm one. Ovals are smoother, but the shapes are still weird. Doesn't feel great. Okay, that's pretty good. We got the connection there. We got those nice shapes. The shade's not nearly sized or angled right at the ending of the R, but everything else, pretty happy with. Shape is a little wonky on that little oval, but that's alright. That one felt good. Flow-wise, tea break. You are correct, Ojaswini. Someone is teaching casual unshul, also known as funshul, not known as ghetto unshul. Yeah, I'm teaching casual unshul for Mont Blanc tomorrow morning. It's probably going to be a short stream tonight. I do apologize, but I have a lot of stuff to do this evening to prepare, not just for that tomorrow, but I teach a tap class also tomorrow, and I have some stuff I have to do tonight that is unrelated to both of those things. But yes, I'm teaching I call it ghetto unshul. I think Bailey was the one who coined that term once upon a time. I don't mean it in a bad way at all. I love the style. I don't write it very often. I'm looking forward to teaching it. It's just super casual. It should be, most of what I teach is quite challenging for most everybody. This is like the one thing that I teach that is, I don't want to say easy because nothing's really that easy, but it's super chill. It's broken down into 3 parts. 3 parts? Yeah, this one's, I'm teaching it in 3 parts. It could have been potentially 2 parts, but we're taking our time, chilling through it. We'll do 3 parts, spanning from now. There's quite a bit of time between each part. We start tomorrow morning though, 11:30 Pacific Daylight Time. Okay, that's better shade for the R. And we did catch all these. My nib is still not feeling too happy, but I'm pretty sure it's my fault. My hand is changing a little bit angles as I go into the J, because my forearm has trouble reaching that whole thing. You signed up? Well, that's fun. Should be a fun class. Again, very chill. It's a chill one. Normally in my Spencerian ornamental penmanship and design classes, we're fighting to get everything done in the time, and people are crying. It's well, people have cried, but it's not a common occurrence. But that shouldn't happen with this one. This should be a nice chill flow of a class. Whoa, don't know what happened to my J there. Alright, we're gonna take a pause on the R and the J. And then we're gonna move into the Q. My favorite variation of the Q that not a lot of people like. I love it. It's the GQ. His GQ is the shade is very high. And the whole thing is very narrow. And then coming off of the... Yeah, he just comes just above the baseline. So I'm going to bring my exit stroke just to there, and then I'll stop when I do it. And we want this to sort of ideally start a little bit down there. A comma dot? I don't know what the proper term is, if I'm being 100% honest. I would just call it a dot. I would assume there is a proper term, but I personally would add the dot afterwards. You could do the dot like so, and then from there come out of it, going into the Q like that, which turned out relatively well. But I get nervous because I want to come out of the Q sort of with freedom. I get nervous that I'm not actually going to start right in that little dot. So I prefer to start just free and then come back later and add the little dot in there. Do I know which way Kanan did it? I honestly don't know. In the print, this line right here is heavier. There's a possibility. And I can't say that this is how we did it, but there's always a possibility that he even did this. If we went straight into the shade, which this feels appealing, and then came back after and wrote that there. I would not be surprised if it was done that way, just by the way that line looks. I'm going to try to start and get that little hook on the top just in one stroke so I don't have to come back, but there's a good chance that that's how we did it. And then same with the little ball here. He either added the ball and then went into the next, into the lowercase letters, or he just went into his lowercase letters and then came over here afterwards and added that little ball. Either or, whichever works. Personal opinion is whatever gets it on the page most comfortably for you. Oh, hey, what's going on, Yo Saren? Today I am using McCaffrey's Penman's Black ink. My favorite black ink to use these days. I change my preferences quite often. Oh, you signed up, Rose. Nice. I look forward to seeing you there. Now, you'll notice, well, I haven't shown you yet, I guess, but like this, I really like this shade. Nice and long, cutting off before the baseline. Could cut a little bit sooner and up there, but you'll notice Kanan's, it is short, so that this shade is like the same length as this shade and this shade. These shades are obviously shorter, but he cuts it way sooner than I do, so I'm gonna have to get that habit. Anchal is, I mean, the best way to sort of, Anchal is a very, very old script, but I'm not going to get super deep into the historical lesson of it. The way I like to think of Anchal, it's the script, it's the style that an Irish pub would use for their logo or for their sign, basically. The variation that I'm teaching of it is very, I've trained, I've been taught, and I really like traditional, proper, good Anchal. What we are doing in this class is sort of just removing a lot of the things that make it calligraphy and just turning it into a casual style of writing that can happen not fast, but that can happen a little more stress-free, a little more casual, as the name implies. Or a lot of it you can do it in monoline or in like any size broad pen. Traditional Unshul is a broad pen style. We're not going to be using broad pen. We're using fountain pens. So I'll be using primarily just fine and medium monoline pens. They have an oblique nib, and they also have a BB, which is like a double broad, but it writes narrower, or it writes wider on the downstroke than the side stroke. So it's not a full-on, like, it's not like a stub or anything like that. But they have some that give a little bit of variation. Yep, it's posted on their website. All the classes that have been up there, or most of them anyways, are available afterwards. I think the only ones that aren't are the ones that are specific to like a holiday or something like that. But like my Spencerian class is still online if you want to watch it there. Quillman, or Kanan I guess, fully didn't dot the I on this signature. I don't know why. It was probably a printing error, but I looked at the original Kanan book, and because I was worried that I just accidentally erased it when I was editing the image. But nope, there's no dotted I in the Kanan book. The handouts never download from the recording. When you get I guess when you sign up, you get the handouts, right? Or you get an email from them to get access to the handouts, I think. And then I have a page on my website where people can go and download the handouts if they missed it. If they missed the class, which I haven't promoted that link yet. Well, just to Yog Saren, it's tough to say because, like, this signature, for example, this is a print block. This is not what the actual writing looked like. A lot of Kanan signatures, and a lot of the signatures that were printed in the Business Educator and in a lot of the magazines were written huge. So they would use, like, an India ink or something like that when they were essentially drafting or engrossing a signature. They were drawing it, basically. But I would assume Kanan, when doing his movement writing, when doing ornamental penmanship signatures, I mean, could he have used India ink? Potentially. But I would lean towards, I would assume he used more of the same inks that the other penmen of the day were using, because his work looks very similar to the penmen of the day. Yeah, if you sign up for a past class, you have to go to my website, basically, to get the handouts there. Or you have to go to the link that I have. What up, David? How you doing? Alright, let's keep this Q shade nice and high. Not quite enough hook on the top of that one. Not smooth enough. Nice shade, but it's too long. Yeah, discussing... Well, yeah, Yog Saren mentioned that Kanan used India ink, which is quite possible. But I'm not so sure about that. Because if you look at his ornamental penmanship nib or ink on paperwork, I would assume he used what the majority of penmen of the day used, which would be, well, depending on who they were, but like a Japan ink with Arnold's writing fluid mixed in, or a version of an Iron Gall ink, which is quite similar to a Japan ink. Yeah, so like preparing plates, that's very different. Because you need your hairlines. Like, you wouldn't want to send, unless you were Mataraz and you didn't want anybody to be able to print your work, I wouldn't want to send this specifically to an engraver to do a plate, because that hairline is so fine. Especially using the tools and whatnot that they had in the day. So if they were doing printed work, I don't think most of their printed work would look, to be honest, all that great before being printed. Oh, well, I guess, yeah, I mean, same idea though, because photo engraving, you still need your hairlines and whatnot to be relatively dark, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's why they used the India ink. So it was super, or as fine as they could get it, but it would still be a solid black line, which I don't think most of them, well, I could be wrong. I think having that contrast in shade made most of their ornamental penmanship work, is the thing that made most of their ornamental penmanship work look so nice in person. Well, yeah, Yog Saren, this printed signature, like I'll show you why it was so, if I can reach a plate or a block. So this signature would have been engraved into a piece like so. So it would have some depth. And it was very, very difficult for them to obviously get crazy, crazy fine hairlines. They could do a decent job hairline, but it would be virtually impossible for them to get the hairlines as thin as they would be written in the pieces that we see in the scrapbooks, engraved into metal like this. So what you're seeing here, this is from a print block. This would have been from a block the exact same as this. So obviously the lines aren't going to be, this is, well, we will never know unless we find the original, what this looked like. There's a good chance that this signature was written with India ink and prepared like potentially 6 inches long. There are some in the Healy collection that are 12, 13, 14 inches long that were then printed this size. There was a lot of trickery in the way they did that sort of stuff. So when we look at these signatures that are in, oh yeah, have you never seen the ones from the Healy collection, David? You gotta check it out. Like, Iamphith now, they have a binder. Neil and I put it together this past summer. We have, because they have full one-to-one printouts. Not on this. No, they're not in the scrapbooks that I put up. They are in the Healy collection that I'm referring to is what Scranton has. So it's all on Scranton's website. If you look at the Horace G. Healy collection, if you see the signatures in there, you don't really realize when you're looking at them, like, because you see them and they have the little marks, normally they'll put underneath like 6 inches or 5 inches or 3 inches, how the size of it. I never knew until I saw the one-to-one duplicates, because what Iamphith did, like, is what Michael Saul did way back in the day. Before Scranton had that collection, they took it and had it all duplicator, had it all scanned, and then Iampith or Michael Sull had a set of them printed for himself in 1-to-1 size at the highest scans possible, and Iampith has another copy of all of those duplicates, and they look beautiful. Like, they're obviously not as good as the real thing, but they're as close to the real thing as you can possibly get because they're printed in full size. But they have for years just stayed in the archive because they're so big. Like, the sheets of paper are massive. They're like giant posters on relatively thin paper. So what Neil and I did this year, we took those sheets of paper, cut off some of the excess, and we put them in blueprint binders. So they're big, like cloth covered, but essentially a portfolio binder, similar to like this type of a thing, but rather than this size, they are massive. Like, they are heavy because they're full with, I don't remember how many pages. Whoops. But they're full, so you can go through them and see these signatures. Some of them are like this big. Like, some of them are a good, like, 2.5, 3 feet long, and most of them were printed in, like, that's what somebody would have potentially used for, like, a business card or something like that. It wasn't the majority, I don't believe. I think the majority of, like a signature like this or something. This would have probably been made, a little bit bigger than this, maybe like 6, 7, 8 inches to be printed at the size. Well, it's bigger than this in the book, I believe. Or it could have been at proper size, but then when Zaner Blozer or whoever's printing them would have to print them, they have to get them engraved onto something like so, photo engraved, to be engraved in the block. Those hairlines would have had to get thicker so they could actually print. So yeah, unfortunately, Yog Saren, when we look at signatures like this, it's really, we can't say. Like, and that's kind of why when I mention, like, this little bit here, you can obviously see very clearly in this print, this hairline here is thicker. If this was in a scrapbook and we were looking at the original, I could say with confidence that either he pulled ink here, or that he had some fibers in his nib there, or he did the shade and came back and wrote this direction. You could say that because you could see it. But with this could very well just be a blotch in the printing process, or it could be the way that it was engraved. A lot of times, like, if you looked, we all have the business educators, we have what is on the University of Scranton's website and what has been scanned. I'd be willing to bet that if you took 2 copies of the same volume of the Business Educator, all those prints aren't going to look the exact same. They're going to look pretty close, but just because of the printing process, anytime you're printing with blocks, there's always a chance that the print is going to be slightly different. It's one of the great things about printing with blocks is that it has life, but it's impossible to say. Yog Saren, you can't say that the hairlines are too thick. These weren't written hairlines. This is a printed block. This isn't a written thing. You can't say that. And a great example, is to look at some of the pieces by Lupfer, for example. If you look at Lupfer's samples that Iampith has in, like, Iampith scrapbook number 1 and 2, there are some samples in that book that have been printed in the Business Educator. And the lines from the Business Educator are way thicker than the lines from the original. The original was written with an iron gall or with a Japanese ink, likely not an India ink, but the hairlines were beautiful. But then because of the process required to make the printing block, those hairlines go away. Some of the only examples in the Business Educator that show the hairlines for what they are the ones like when they would post some of Mataraz's work, or most of the times when they posted E.W. Blozer's work, they were like legitimately like photos, and then it's a different printing process. The plate is much more flat, it's not engraved all the way in, and they don't look nearly as good because they're hard, really hard to see. But that's what they would do when they were trying to preserve those hairlines. But like I say, if you look at Lupfer's work, the originals that were then printed don't look the same. The prints are thicker. The prints are always going to be thicker. So you can't look at this and say this was clearly India ink because the hairlines are thick. You can't tell. This could have, and that's just because this could have been made 3 feet long. This could have been made this exact size. This could have been made twice the size. It could have been drafted with India ink and then engraved. It could have been done with iron gall ink and then the lines got thicker in the engraving process. There's countless ways that it could have been done. So, and you can't say that's how it was done. It's impossible because we don't know. If you show me this original, I don't believe I've ever seen it. If it exists out there, I would like to see it. But if in one of the scrapbooks or in one of the collections, the original ink on paper of this exists, then we can say how it was done. We can look and we can make more educated choices. But anything that was printed in a book or a magazine, this being one of them, you can't possibly know. Because you look side to side on, like, I will say some of Lupfer's pieces. I have I don't own, but I will hold from like the Iampith collection or whatnot. You look at the original, and then you look at, I have some print blocks. I have the original of that print block, and then I have the print of it, and they are different. So it's impossible to deduce. So you can't say that he definitely used India ink for this. You don't know. Did he use India ink to draft signatures for print? Probably. Highly likely, especially ones that were going to be reduced. But can't make a blanket statement to say that you can clearly see it was India ink, because you can't make that assumption. Because that's what it is, an assumption. Yeah, iron gall ink. I mean, a lot of the stuff printed was from iron gall ink. But what you don't see in a lot of the prints is the size differences. You don't see the notes that were in the prepared plate, that the plate that the penman would have put together. Or the size that they had to change them specifically for the printing process to fill a book. Not everything was printed at 1:1, unfortunately. That'd be great for us if everything was, but it's just not, unfortunately. Yeah, for the most part, the originals would be larger than what was printed, but not always. If it is clearly ornamental penmanship and clearly movement written, then there's a good chance it wasn't done a lot bigger. But, as the Healy collection shows, sometimes they were. They were cheaters, masters at vintage Photoshop. Whoops. I mean, that's why it's so exciting when we find and scan originals, because a lot of the originals show, a lot of them state how big things want to be. Like, even somebody could do something like this R. They would do this R and J. Ran out of paper because we're out of room, but they could do this R and J, and then on the original, it's the only place you see it, is the little note that says to be printed in 1.5 inches or something like that. And we don't get to see those if we don't see the originals. Ooh, let's hear it, David. What's your question? This is a good question. Do I ever feel a building up of nervous energy as I do the multiple air races before striking a stroke? No. I air trace, as you guys see. I air trace I wish I didn't air trace as much as I do. But I do so many ovals in the air. It's ridiculous. It's 100% unnecessary. What I'm normally doing, and this is when I was listening to this past Ink Tank episode. There's so many. I've had a quite long chat just on the Discord in private with Gray just about. I wanted to be in the room and be adding things to pretty much every topic you guys talked about the entire podcast. But specifically this isn't one of the things you guys talked about, but when it comes to doing the air ovals, and they weren't just like, they weren't like bad thoughts or like arguments or anything like that, just things that I wanted to like co-sign and be like, but have you thought about it this way, and stuff like that. When I'm doing my air ovals, this sort of touches on a little bit when Gray was talking about visualization and things like that. When I'm doing the air ovals, it's not that I'm really preparing for that first drop. I don't know if you noticed anyways, when I don't really often start from my air ovals. I will do my air ovals, like if I was just doing a horizontal entry, I would do my air ovals, and then I kind of stop, and then I do my entry. I do my entry on the move, but rather than go straight from my air ovals, I'm not a fan of doing that, personally. I like to do my air ovals, and then I stop, and then I start. But I start moving like right here and drop my nib right there, sort of a thing. So I start moving right before. So what's happening during my air ovals is more just like, it's not specifically this because I don't actually go through a checklist, but it's basically a time for me to sort of do a mental checklist of preparing to do whatever stroke I'm trying to do. For example, if I'm doing, just like this, just a standard horizontal oval. I've done horizontal ovals hundreds of thousands of times now. So it's getting my arm ready, making sure my forearm is in a good spot to do that oval, making sure my paper is in a good spot so my fingernails aren't going to catch on my glide sheet. And then just sort of, normally I'm going into more than just the horizontal oval. So it's about thinking about what's coming next and just like where I have to go, making sure I'm mentally prepared. A big one is taking a large breath, and the breath doesn't come from anxiety or nervous tension or anything. It's if you do right before you write, your writing's going to be better, guaranteed, every single time, no matter what. If you're relaxed, your writing is better. So the air oval is me sort of relaxing. So I think potentially during my late night lives, I probably do even more air ovals than I do when I'm just writing on my own, because I'm constantly going from talker mode, reading chat mode, to writing mode. So it's like, okay, now get yourself back to what you're doing here, so I'm fully focused. Otherwise, if I feel like if I don't do them, I'm just kind of like throwing away each stroke without giving it the proper attention and proper like setup. So it's almost like the warm-up every single time to get ready for a stroke. That being said, it has now become a habit for me to do. Yeah, well, I think throwing away each stroke, that's what it is. It's as a teacher, you did do this as well. We try to deter students from doing, autofocus is on, sorry. We try to deter students from just like practice without like you have to be in the right mental state. You have to be in the right body state. Otherwise, your practice is just writing and you're not actually going to be getting anything out of it. You don't have to get something out of your writing. If you wanted to sit down and just play, sit down and play. That's totally okay. But when you want to be practicing and you want to be growing and learning and that kind of stuff, so when you're in a dedicated, what I think of as like an actual practice or study session, everything you do, regardless of how it turns out, you want it to be better than the last time. And if for that to happen, you have to be in that state of relaxation and focus, and you can't be out of it really. So yeah, what I was saying then is now, because I've been in the habit of doing so many, I do too many now. Like I will just keep going and going and going. And a lot of times I notice it when I record my signatures, because they're quite involved. Like this one, you got the R all the way into the G. There's a lot of things to remember. So like doing this stroke, as I'm preparing with my air ovals, I'm reminding myself, now don't forget, the exit of the R has to be round. Don't forget to keep this shade short. Don't forget to keep like all the little things. Don't like relax your hand so you're not actually pressing down onto the paper. All those things. And I don't think I actually go through that checklist. I think that's somewhat a subconscious thing now. But a lot of it stems from, I think that's where it started, and that's why I got in the habit of doing so many. Because as I was going, it's like, cool, relax, breathe, don't forget this, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the things I have to remember in the next fraction of a second while I do this single stroke that is really challenging. That makes sense. So you feel like the more you do, you're sort of just building like, I've been just now this is my habit. I guess if you go back to the horizontal oval. So what you're saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, as you're doing this, so you're doing your air ovals in your horizontal oval, now I guess technically, if I think of it as a dancer, your motor right now is prepared to do these ovals rather than the one single stroke. So the more you do the ovals, it's that moment of like breaking in. I guess the best way I could think about it is, here's the best analogy I can come up with on the spot here for this, or for like making what you're saying make complete sense and I guess validating why you feel that way. Watch somebody try to get into a skipping rope. Like when two people are holding a skipping rope and they're going, the person getting in, I mean, if you don't think about it, you 1, 2, jump in. But then you get the person who, if you're like 1, 2, 3, 4, you get used to missing it, and you get used to the flow of now you're just here. This is the flow you're in. You're not in the jumping in flow. So that totally makes sense. Okay, so, and then what you're saying, you've greased the groove, so you're worried that you're all good here, but when you go down, you're not gonna have the same feeling, because it's not, you've already settled into this is home. But if you go down to here, that's not home anymore, I'm assuming is what that means. Your groove is off the page and not below. What you don't want to do, you want to keep the flow on the page. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes complete sense, David. I think in a perfect world, I wouldn't do as many entry ovals. And I believe it was, I mean, you were in here, I think, the one week when you mentioned not doing them at all. I think you, Brian, I think Diego was in here as well, talking that day about doing no entry at all, not even a warm-up. And then we were going in, just like going straight in straight into the stroke, which I think is a decent practice. Because like I said, I do too many. But it's just sort of become my... I guess the longer I do them, I've never felt stuck, as you say. That's not a feeling that I've ever felt out of it. It's always just been my sort of, for lack of a better term, ritual for getting ready to write the letter. And I wish I did less of them, because I get asked all the time when I'm writing in front of people are watching me write, why do you do all the air ovals, or how, like, do you do a specific number, or questions like that. And there's genuinely, now, like these days, it's not a to-do list, it's not really anything, it just sort of is, it's the habit for me when I create a letter now. It's straight, well, you can see already, I just go down to start writing whatever the stroke is, and I just start doing the air ovals. And it's just sort of getting ready, prepping, making sure I'm not gripping the pen, making sure my arm is ready, and then I pause, and I do the stroke. There's always, I rarely start from my air ovals. It's not a, that's not a technique that I ever personally enjoy doing. So I will always do my air ovals, pause, and then write my stroke. So I feel like because of that pause, every time I write, it's starting right at the pause doesn't happen till I feel like I'm ready for the stroke. So if I'm here, like let's say I'm talking to you and I'm thinking really quick and I'm a hyperactive dude, I'm like, cool, let's write. If I just went to write right now, it would be, I mean, it would potentially look okay, but it would feel a mess to me because I'm not in sort of writing zone. So it's a few of these, turn my my YouTube brain off, turn my writing brain on, then I'm ready. Whoa, I don't have ink. But then I would do the stroke. And that's a very good point when you bring up the dancer thing. And this was a lot of the sort of like things I wanted to touch on when Gray was talking about the mental image. And you guys were having that conversation in the podcast. A lot of my sort of what I wanted to add to that conversation was the direction I take when doing dance, or when, and you would be able to appreciate this as well, from like an acrobatic sort of mind frame of how the visualization is used in that sense. But it's more of I visualize to feel, but once I feel, visualizing will only sort of hold me back, because then I'm essentially tracing, and when I'm tracing, I'm definitely going to be losing something in the freedom of the movement, because I am the dancer, so I write like the dancer. It is 1000% the feel for me. Once I can't overanalyze the things. I overanalyze the feeling, but it's the feeling. It's very much not broken down very much, because once I break it down, I don't enjoy it anymore, because it doesn't feel like free movement and whatnot. I've seen videos of myself writing though, or if I watch some of these lives back, when I'm in the middle of a sort of a conversation, I'll be just doing ovals forever. Sometimes my air ovals, I don't count them, but there's a ton of them in there. Oh, I have an itch on my back. Oof, a free-flowing black ink? Yo, Saren. I genuinely don't. Which I wish I did. Like I have a lot of really free-flowing, smooth, good, colored inks and whatnot. But when it comes to black lines, I'll say I never like my hairlines with basically anything but an iron gall ink. Um, or like I like grinding sumi ink. That would probably be my suggestion then when I come to that. Sorry, it took me a while to get there. If I wanted a good feeling, flowing, non-corrosive ink, I would probably use an ink stick. Can I recommend a good ink stick? No, because I haven't experimented in that world very often. But yeah, a sumi ink would be what I would probably go for. And the reason for that is because as you're mixing it, as you're grinding it rather, the water content, like the amount of water you're adding, you can get the really fine hairlines often with it. You don't get the super solid black lines of a lot of, like, as Marilyn says, like a platinum carbon black. The hairlines in a carbon black are going to be so dark. And they're going to be, I feel like I'm going to have trouble getting a thin enough hairline. There is, yeah, I would go with a sumi. Sumi ink, watered down sumi ink, or personally I would like to grind it myself. So I still need to experiment with some other sticks to play. But yeah, that would be my suggestion, would be sumi, and then just get the water. It's going to take some experimentation to see how diluted you want it to be for what you want it to look like. So you're still black shades, but maybe slightly lighter, not jet black hairlines. So all that to say, I pretty much only use iron gall ink when it comes to black, so I don't have a lot of suggestions. And I've actually never used Higgins Eternal in my entire life. I'm probably one of the few penmen or calligraphers who would say that, but I've never used it. I've never heard many good things about it, so I don't use it. Yeah, if you're using, iron gall does have a trade-off. Iron gall is designed to be used. They used it with nibs that cost them pennies. They were dirt cheap. Like even now, the Leonard Principle modern pen still costs you like $2. So if I was writing like with iron gall and didn't want to tune my nibs or anything like that, I could probably go through multiple nibs in a day if I was writing all the time. But that just doesn't happen because I don't want to throw away that many nibs. So that's why I got into tuning and sharpening in my nibs and things like that. I don't know, David. I'm not honestly sure. I have zero experience or understanding of Higgins at all. I don't even know what color it is. Is it like walnut or is it black? I don't know anything about it. Super ignorant to the Higgins Eternal world. My apologies. Yeah. Zero corrosive properties. I feel like you'd have to go for zero corrosion. Sumi. You could also, there's a possibility, we do it with white ink. I've never written with a black gouache. You could also try to find a gouache mix that works for you. Like black gouache mixed with water with a little bit of gum arabic could potentially give you the look you're looking for. Or a passable ink. My white gouache, I really like the way it looks. I would assume I could get a similar mix with black that I would like as well. Yeah. I would say, Yog Saren, my biggest takeaway from that would be the question. You say you predominantly use vintage nibs. My question then it would be why? Because the benefits that come from a vintage nib, I don't think are usually worth it, personally, for like the cost and also destroying something that an equal thing doesn't exist today. So you're this using and essentially wrecking something, which is fine. I don't want to tell somebody to not use vintage nibs, but it's more so to question the use of the vintage nibs. If you can get the same product or a similar good enough product out of something that's not vintage, then why use the vintage? For me personally, I choose this nib over. I have some of the dream points and whatnot, and I would rather use a sharpened Hunt 101 or a tuned Leonard Principle than the vintage nibs. I mean, if I had a ton of vintage nibs and they were being created, then I wouldn't have to worry about it, and I would just use those. But until we get to that point with our nib manufacturers, yeah, I would just question more so, and this is not me saying don't do it. It's more so just make sure there's a good reason to use vintage nibs, because there's a lot of modern nibs that do a decent job. Or especially with practice. You can practice with not a vintage and then use vintage when you need something to look excellent. You're doing show work or piece work or something like that. Or scrapbook stuff. Oops, gray shade. That is an ugly exit shade. Whoops. Me too, Marilyn. Me too. Yeah, I feel like a gouache could be relatively decent. I would experiment with gouaches and sumis. Sumi would be my first look, the first thing that I would explore. That exit flourish is, yeah, just a horizontal, short horizontal shade. That is ugly. Tuck the elbow in a little bit to change the angle of the nib. That's better. Still putting the shade too late. Oof. Yeah. Well, not just any L's. This... Look at these ascenders! They are so long and gorgeous. They're amazing. So long. They are two absolutely gorgeous L's. Yeah. Like my instinct, and we've talked about this in previous lives, if I wanted those to be perfect, or if I was doing this for a scrapbook or something, I pretty much would turn my page, and I would do those two, because they're so long. That second one's better. There we go. Yeah, something like that. I would turn my page and do them with hinge movement. I don't want to though, because I'm stubborn. I want to execute them at my standard slant. Or my standard paper angle. But getting them the same, easier said than done. Unfortunately. Yeah, they are much longer than I would naturally do for that size of an X height. I don't know that I'd say only Japanese companies know how to make good steel pens these days. I would more so think, I mean, because the companies that are making them today are some of the same companies that made them back in the day with some of the same equipment. But the issue is that, unfortunately, the number of us that require or that want what we want is very small in the scheme of a very large industry that we are not financially benefiting that much. We're not that big of a slice of the pie, unfortunately. Are we a big enough slice to make a difference? I think so. It's just a matter of convincing the companies, which a number of us have spoken with nib manufacturers. I think the techniques are out there and the materials are out there. It's just a matter of getting it done, which is easier said than done. But we are extremely niche. There's a reason when you go to the majority of the art stores in the world that sell things that the people who manufacture the nibs sell things in those art stores. What makes them money is not us, is not the nibs. We are a very small piece. So it takes finding somebody, getting somebody on board who's really down for the niche market. Yeah, but I guess I've never used a Japanese pen that comes close to a nib that I would want to use. I'll say that. For this type of work. Yeah, like what the Japanese companies are producing is good at for what they are producing it for, but is not good for what we want. Those are, yeah, they're drawing nibs. And the Nikko G is great. Like all the zebras, all the Japanese pens are great, but they could, if they wanted to, create something that was what we wanted, but it's not the market for them. But I don't think their manufacturing is any more advanced or specialized than what's happening in North America, or or in Europe for that matter. It's just that, the materials they're using, it's a billion times easier to get a perfect nib slit on a Nikko G than it is on something like a Leonard Principle or a Hunt 101, because the material is so different. It is, the stiffer the nib, and the Nikko G is very stiff. The majority of the Japanese pens are quite stiff. The precision required is not there, or is not, there's not nearly as much precision required. Hello, Scribble Monkey. Just join. What's the conversation? We are chatting about, nibs currently. Pens and pen production. Oh, my ascenders are not very consistent today. Oh, that first one was pretty much perfect. Oh, too angled. Not bad. I'm going much more than 52 or much less than 52 degrees though. Which canons are a little more angled than that as well, but well, because they have the market. Like, I'm not saying that they don't do a better job. I wish that the people who made Nico G nibs would endeavor to make a pen that is comparable to, like, a Zenarian Fine Writer, because I genuinely believe they would be able to. I don't think it's because they're better. I think it's that if they decide they want to do it, they're going to sort of do it from scratch and make it happen. But I don't think that's ever going to happen because there's not a market. Is there a market for art nibs? Yes, which is how they make money up with their nibs. We're not a market for them, unfortunately. Please do B with the same loop. Okay. We can do that. Right, a little bit closer to myself here. Oops. Give me a hairline. Ugh, my second one's too angled, but there's a nice B with a really long ascender stroke. Yeah, if anybody has any contacts at the factory that makes Nico G pens, let's talk. I will go to Japan and I will meet with them and I will talk with them and we can get it done. I would love that. Because they could do it if they wanted to. It's just like any manufacturer, it's a matter of convincing them that there could be a market for it, because the investment is large to get started in making something, unfortunately. And with the nibs we want, the more flexible and the more our requirements are much higher and much more fine-tuned and specialized than something like a Nico G or any of the Japanese pens, basically. So when you get to those materials, it's harder. Quality control becomes way more important. I mean, you hardly have to quality control a Nico G. You could run over them with a truck and they're fine. So it's to me, it's apples and oranges. You can't really compare them. So for a company, it comes down to is it worth it? And the answer for most of them, unfortunately, is no. I don't know. I don't know if there's a vintage pen that is the same model or looking as the Nico G, the Zebra G, or any of the G nibs. At least not in the Mitchell pens I've seen. I haven't seen all of them, so it very well might exist. I love me some Mitchell nibs. Their beak nibs are glorious. But I don't believe. Yeah, one may exist, or they might have had one that exists. I've just never seen it. Yeah. It's probably closest to a bank nib. Let's see. Let's go into a realm of checking. Well, the only bank nib I have is a Esterbrook, though. I think. What do we got here in this little box of stuff? I don't even know where my bank nibs are. Maybe I can't see. I don't know where my bank nibs are. I'm looking. They're big nibs. Oh, they're huge. Let's see here. Do I have a Nico G? I don't have a zebra on hand, but I have a Nico here. There's a Nico. We don't have shoulders on the bank nib. Jeez, the bank nib is even bigger than a Nico. Huge! That's a massive nib. It's a solid nib. Doesn't flex nearly as wide. Very stiff. But yeah, they're huge. And they made ones that were much bigger than this too. I don't know that I've seen a vintage nib that has this same... It probably exists. I haven't seen all vintage nibs. Like many penmen, when I got into penmanship, I went down the rabbit hole of nibs, vintage nibs, and all the different kinds of nibs. Acquiring different kinds, testing out different ones, seeing the dream points, and trying to see how close you could get without paying crazy prices. But at the end of the day, give me a Leonard Principle or a Hunt 101. Unless I'm writing slow. If I'm writing slow and I want a good hairline, I will still use this. Why I keep a Nico in here. I'll still use a Nico from time to time, but rarely. These days. Too far away from myself now. Wow, you don't have to look closely to see it doesn't have the side slits. That's why I was saying they don't look the same. Unfortunately, I don't think so. If you... I don't know. You can try to share a link, but I don't think it'll work. Unfortunately. I think links get auto-modded. But I feel like we haven't had a spam bot in a long time. Yeah, if you posted a link, it didn't actually get posted. It got auto-modded. Is there a way for me to... See, block links isn't checked. Which is weird. According to the current filters, yeah, according to the current filters, you should be able to post a link, but it didn't post your link. Oh, that's for comments. I guess, David, you could do that. So, because this is a YouTube video, if you put it, I'm assuming, when we're live, you can still post a comment on the video. So, not in chat, but you can post a comment. And I will assess that, but I gotta figure out how, because the spam bots were able to post websites. They did. We haven't had one of those in a long time, but they used to post websites all the time. Usually when things are hidden or modded, it tells me and I can choose to make it visible or not, but it didn't do that this time. I'll have to go through my settings afterwards. I'm curious why they made the breather hole so big on the Hunt 101. It's huge. I wish the Hunt 101 had a smaller breather hole. It would be, I think, a better knit if it did. It would lose a little bit of flexibility, but it would gain snap a little bit more. More room, my glide sheet gets in the way. Oh, wrong direction. That's a G. Oops. I did not notice, but I don't see the same thing as you guys. So I don't think that question was for me, Marilyn. Sorry. Whoa, that's not an oval. Messy signature. This one's going to take some work to get looking the way I want it to look. Exit flourish is going to take some serious practice as well, even though it's so easy. Yeah, the Calipos website, that was my I spent a lot of time on that website back in the day. Many hours reading different nib analysis and breakdown. Come. Why is that exit stroke so hard? It shouldn't be hard. We just need the shade to be right. Right there. Oh, sorry, I was out of frame. So I probably don't mention as much as I do that. I tweak the placement of my elbow a lot. And now this is something I don't necessarily specifically teach this all the time because it's not in the old books. And if I was in one of the old classes, those guys perhaps would beat me with a meter stick or with a yardstick because it's something you shouldn't do. But I find that modifying the placement of my elbow is one of the things that makes it possible for me to not have to change the angle of my paper all the time. I mean, I do change the angle of my paper now and again for certain strokes, but I find, yeah, like anytime you're doing a shade that has to go horizontally, like if you're even just doing a horizontal oval that's shaded, if I just do standard relaxed placement on the desk, you can get a shade up there relatively easily, so long as you have enough movement. But if you tuck that elbow just a little bit, and you don't change anything else in the hand, you just tuck the elbow just a couple inches, even if not even that. Whoops. You can get, I mean, my nib is basically going then sideways. So I guess the example of a letter, if you're doing, say, capital S, where standard, if your nib is on like the 52-degree slant line like this, and you're doing that compound curve shade to go around on the ending of an S, the best of these strokes in the old books has the shade like almost coming up off the baseline. And the best way to, or the easiest way to accomplish that, I find, if I tuck my elbow a little bit, and I can get that shade sitting right, if I could do a good one, I can get that shade, there we go, sitting, oh, I was out of frame, sorry, sitting right on the bottom of that, which I find a lot easier with my elbow a little bit tucked in. Or alternatively, if you don't want to move your page, and I will say for this one, so it's likely easier to move the page, but if you're doing ascender strokes, like if you're having trouble with the push-pull of an ascender like that, and you want to rotate your paper to use more hinge movement, you move your elbow out slightly, and then your hinge movement is, I mean, you're still angled, but you can move your elbow out, and then use your regular movement, and it gets a little bit closer to being like a hinge movement. It's not fully hinge movement because you'd have to put my elbow way over here to get it to be, which technically you could do. Yeah, you could totally do that, but not necessarily something I would recommend. But yeah, slight tweaks, or yeah, for different letters, depending on where you want your, like, I would potentially, if I was doing a capital B, I'm just assuming here, these are things that I feel like I would just do somewhat subconsciously now. Doing the last shade on a capital B, we have a capital B here. Whoa, ugly shade there. Doing that shade, if I have, like, let's say paper angle wise, I'll bring my paper out here so I can show what I mean. Paper angle wise, if I have my paper at this is my writing angle today, which is where I like to write the most. If I want to do an S, I would likely want to be at an angle like this. I would put my page so my slant line is a little more vertical, so then I can get that nice shade at the bottom. But if I'm doing the B, because this shade goes around over to the right, if I go the opposite direction, I'm going to be able to create that shade better. But the reason I don't like to do that most of the time with the paper is when I change, this oval and this oval are not going to be able to be just my standard ovals that I like to use, the angles of ovals that I'm used to. But if I bring the elbow out a little bit, it puts the nib in the position that it would be in if I had moved my paper, so that then I can do that B, pulling the shade a lot smoother than if my nib was like this. I'm pulling my shade just by moving my elbow 1 inch out. I can use the same arm-driven movement to get the shape that I want. That's always fine. I've tried to use that in designs before and it looks so funny to me. So you're saying, wait, let me read that again. Do you mean, like, just to see, like, you mean something like this, right? Like so? I feel like if that's what you're talking about, I see that, yeah, I see it more. And is that, I think, probably the most common use of that technique to write it down, saving the space and whatnot. Pretty much always. I mean, Zaner and Blozer use it all the time in their signatures at the end of their letters and whatnot. But so you're saying you tuck the elbow, or you move your elbow for that one? So you can do the... Or tuck it in so you're coming down. Trying to understand. Tuck the elbow in. Tucking the elbow in makes it a little... It's not fully hinge movement. It makes it, I think, a little bit easier to get that sort of reversed push-pull shape. Whereas a natural push-pull would be here. Where as I tuck my elbow in, closer and closer and closer. So I guess it's not this. You get the... Yeah, I get what you're saying. I feel like I'm doing a bad job demonstrating that I get what you're saying. But yes, because it would be easier, because then you're just writing along. It's going to feel more like you're writing along that baseline. I guess the issue that happens there, for me anyways, is you can see where if I move my elbow in, I naturally make the ascender of my D ends up being, like, this is the hinge movement then for that ascender. Which you'd have to be careful because you want that to be... I think it makes writing on that baseline easier. But you have to be careful. Whoa, no, that's no good. Because all the letters still face up. Fascinating. It definitely makes writing it easier. But the way I write it that way, the letters themselves don't. I would have to get used to writing them so they're still the letters themselves are still the angle that I want them. Which would be something like that. But I'm surprised. I almost guarantee that the guys back in the day used that technique. And I'm trying to remember. I don't know if it's Zahner's book. I do feel like there's one book that talks about slightly repositioning the elbow. But I feel like I would have to ask Greg, because he would remember where it's been stated more. But I do feel like it has been stated, but very, very little. Not nearly as, like for me, it's a huge part of how I write. The position of my elbow is a huge part of how things have to change and get tweaked and whatnot. To easier or to more easily create certain letters. Like, it's similar to sort of the question or the debate where, like, if we have our nib and we always talk about the nib has to be along the 52-degree slant line, to which I agree, or like in Grosser script and strokes and scripts like that, but I personally don't think it's as important for ornamental penmanship. And when you go through the old books, the only books that actually tell you that specific rule, the nib going along the slant line, are modern. Or engrosser script, and usually modern depictions of engrosser script and whatnot. It's that specific thing. Like, they show you your ovals go along that slant line, but I don't know if you're like, I teach it that way because that's how it was taught to me. But I genuinely don't think I write that way. Not anymore, anyway. So I no longer teach the nib should be on the 52-degree slant line. I teach that that's a good place to start, to figure out, because everybody likes a different sort of slant. So I think it's a good place to start where your nib is chilling on the 52. But if I'm being honest, for ornamental penmanship, I'm more comfortable if my nib is slightly more vertical than the 52. Like where I have my camera set up right now, 52 would be about there. That's 52. And this is my slant. Sorry, this is 52. And this is where my nib is actually sitting. Right? Wait. Did I say that right? So wait, this is 52. That's 52. Wait a minute, no. Give me 2 seconds here. Now I've confused myself. So I tend to write, so there's 52-degree slant. I personally prefer to write with my nib at about that angle. And the main reason for that is strokes like... Ooh, gray shade. Strokes like that. Those strokes are way harder if your nib is at 52 degrees. Those shades. I like my nib to be slightly more shaded, or slightly more angled. Yeah, so I feel like the nuance of elbow modification or elbow placement is huge, or can be huge. For me anyways, I find that important, and I'm surprised it's not in any of the books. I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe taught it in their classes, but it was a bit too nuanced for the books, and that's why it's not in a lot of the old books, potentially. I'm not sure. It's curious, though. This signature is going to require a lot more work to get it where I want it to be. Not terrible, but not wonderful. Look out. The Q is so easy to make really heavy. I have to show extreme, or I have to use extreme restraint on that shade and this shade to make them match the other ones, because the other ones are much harder to get large. Especially the A shade on the top of the Q. That one, I have to show restraint. It is easier to make it thin, but what Kanan does that makes it hard for me is that it's thick, but it's short, which feels really weird on the on essentially the A stroke. You are not wrong, Yog Saren. That is, yeah. All their work, none of their work was exactly those things. Madara's was average 48. A lot of them were around there, 50, 52. Lupfer's work was pretty much straight on 52. Zayner's work, not all of it was around 50. Some of it was 52, but on average, they were 52 was usually sort of as vertical as they got. It was usually between 52 and more. 58 in Tamlin's? Really? I didn't read that one, the first one. I don't know that I would put Tamlin at 58. That's extremely vertical. His book is not 58, I don't believe. For a long time, my natural, if I just sit down with the baseline here and I write, my natural is about, it's like a good balance between hinge movement and regular, which is about like so, where if this is 52, I usually write, it's not exactly 48, but 48, I found all my old guide sheets used to be 48, because I found that was where I naturally wrote. Well, I was just the most comfortable naturally. But I found that certain letters, I wasn't liking the way they looked. And I started then endeavoring to get more of a Lupfer hand. So I dialed things back down to 52. And my sort of the plan with that was to train everything at 52, to get good at 52. And then when I go more slanted, it's kind of when I can relax and it can get a little bit more slanted. But I wanted the ability, well, I won't say wanted because it's not past tense. I want the ability to write at like a 50-52. More vertical, more traditional, more clean, more precise. And then when I want to go off the rails, I can let it go to more of a 50, 48, 45 type of a thing. I need to see this. That's extremely vertical. Because I can tell you now, Tamlin's ornamental penmanship is not 48 degrees. I do not believe that. Or not 50, yeah, not 58. Page 13. Anywhere between is a good slant. 65 to 80? What are you talking about? I need to see his work. I don't have a slant measuring tool here, but I need to get one. 58 is very vertical. And his writing does not look that vertical to me. Like, yeah, it says 60 to 80 to be exact, but I don't know if, like this. Can I do it with my guide sheet? Can I compare? Yeah, like, if you look at this guide sheet, which is 52, and his standard stem strokes, when he comes down to that shade, that's 52 degrees. That's not. Let me find another one. Liz, I'm not calling you out, I'm calling him out. I think he lied in the beginning. You don't have to measure it. It's not 58 degrees. Let me find one of his straight. Yeah, let me get, is there one on the top? That downstroke would be, yeah. I need to be able to see. Put this straight with all these Ks. Sorry, you guys probably won't be able to see through here. Like there, this is like maybe 53 or 54. This K. But some of these are right on 52. Yeah. I call baloney. What I'll do, because now I'm curious, I want to go through not his printed work. I want to go through some of his scrapbooks. Because I genuinely feel like if his writing was all 58, I'm more be ticked off at myself for not noticing. Because I've looked at his work too much, and it's not that different from other penmen. And the majority of penmen go more angled. I feel like he can't be much more angled, like in his ornamental penmanship work, than like a, I don't know, than like a 50. Even going more than a 55. Like that's like going to like an engrosser script angle. I don't feel like he would go any higher than that. Straightness or like angle wise. That's just too angled. Well, and you bring up a very good point, David, is these people, like they taught specific things. None of their stuff was the exact same. Like even in the famous Madaraz letter that E.W. Blozer wrote, there are multiple angles of ascenders and descenders in that letter. Are the majority of them pretty close? Yes, and they're about like I would say probably like a 50 to 48. There's not exactly 52. I can't remember the angle of that letter. But they weren't it's not that precise. The 58 is very vertical. So that number jumped out at me. All the other ones, like 53 to 48, most penmen would kind of live in that realm a little bit, or like even like some of them would go extreme, like Madaraz would go 45 sometimes and things like that. But I need to see this now. What do you say? Less than 7. Lowercase? Or are we talking going into ornamental penmanship? ornamental penmanship. You compare like that guy with that guy, those are very different. What? We're not disagreeing with you, Yog Saren. I'm saying that, like, even in here, like, this B might be, this might be 58, but this is the only one. I still don't even think that's 58. I don't have a tool to measure it on hand, but I can't believe I never noticed in the beginning that he said, what do you say? 60 to 80 is what he recommended. That's bonkers. Yeah, like, that's 55. That to me, like, going to the natural engrosser script angle, that makes sense. Going more vertical than that, I feel like I would notice. I would have to notice. I wouldn't have to notice. I don't notice everything, but it'd be a huge difference. Because then you're doing vertical penmanship at that point, which looks very different. See, in like an instance like this, like on page 153, if he's doing something that has essentially like an engrosser script thing in it, then potentially he's writing all these downstrokes trying to get them so they're all similar to that. Like those F's are pretty vertical. But still, I don't think that's 58. It might be. Like, that's very vertical. But that's not ornamental penmanship. And you can totally see, like, the difference between, like, vertical there, hella not vertical down here. Yeah. I'm blown away that that's, unless this, in the beginning, if he's not, he's not referring to, I don't know, Spencerian is 52, he says. Writing is made straighter by turning the top of the paper to the right, more slanting by turning it to the left. Very curious. I call baloney. This writing isn't 58. Well, that's, yes, what they say and what they do are two different things. I'm shocked, though. I'm shocked that that's what he, similar to earlier in this stream, I don't think you were here yet, David. I was blown away that in his lessons in this book, he recommended the exit ovals to be round, to be like the size of a dime. That was his suggestion in the book, and I remember reading that when I got into ornamental penmanship, like when I was just getting into this world when I first got this book, and I was really confused by that. I'll be honest, I've apparently never paid attention to that slant line page at the beginning, because I would have measured his work if I saw that, because I don't believe a lot of his work is at 58. I feel like it's baloney. I feel like his work is maybe 55, but a lot of his work, like, some of those stems are 52, 53, 54, 55, somewhere in there. Very curious. Very curious indeed. I gotta go measure some more of Tamblin's writing to see if he actually writes at that angle or if he just teaches at that angle and doesn't actually do it that way. Oh, Tamblin, you're gonna be in trouble if I measure your work and it's not 58 degrees. 60 to, like, And that's the thing. He's recommending 60 to 80? 80? Get out of here. That's straight up vertical penmanship. No way. Maybe for like really condensed engrosser script, you could go 80, I guess. Yeah, I'm probably, yeah. Oh, of average of everything? Ugh. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, Yogg-Saron. That's interesting. I do find that quite fascinating. 58. Oh, Murphy. I didn't realize the time. I'm gonna try to write this signature a couple more times, and then I need to call it a night. I got some work to do before bed. I didn't realize. That means good chats today. I didn't realize what time it was. Sorry, yet again, everybody. We're not gonna make it to the blacklight hour. I just don't have the time today. Circle. That has to be a circle. Oh, thanks a lot for hanging out, Cheryl. Have a good night. We'll talk to you soon. Signature, I got to admit, it's harder than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be an easy one. Ugh. Clean it up. Clean it up. Hopefully we need one more attempt before we hit the end of this page. One more good looking attempt. What's a baseline anyways? I feel like I'm just not very focused today. We got work to do. I mean, yeah, Yogg-Saron, that's why, I mean, that's one of the reasons I suggest his books more than anybody. More than pretty much any other book getting started. Because my favorite comments are those that he has underneath, sort of his little underneath photos. Just no nonsense about the speed you have to get so that you get the movement and then you can get the control afterwards. But I want to tell all of my students to ignore that angle page because I would rather my students did not try to write at 60 to 80 degrees. No, thank you. I mean, they can if they want, but it's not what I would recommend for ornamental penmanship. Or for really any of these styles. You're very welcome, David. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for asking the questions. I like to talk, so if people ask questions that get me talking, I'm all for it. I'm gonna try this signature one final time, and then we're gonna call it a night. Not too bad so far. Not too shabby. One of the better ones for the night, but we still got a long way to go. Alright, everybody. Thank you very much for hanging out with me as always. Good chats tonight. Some good topics got brought up. Some good discussions, which is always fun. If you're wanting to learn some ghetto unchel or a silly little casual variation of unchel that I really like, I'll be teaching that through Mont Blanc. I posted the link on my Instagram story if you want to check that out. I'll be teaching that tomorrow morning. I will be the first of a 3-part series with them. If you want to give this signature a shot, give it a shot. I will be posting a breakdown of it tomorrow on Instagram, so you can give it some attempts. You don't gotta go fast if you don't want to. You can draw it out, you can do it slow, you can do it fast, you can do whatever you want. I just like people to give the challenges a try. Once again, thank you very much for hanging out with me today. Please do ensure that you are falling in love with the process. We love this process here. And don't forget that life should be just a bit of silliness, really. Good night, everybody. Of course, thanks for that, Otis Winnie. Bye.